So now I will turn it over to our presenters. And again, welcome.
Welcome, everyone. We're so happy that you're with us this morning. We've got a couple of learning objectives that we're going to cover today, and you know some of the drill. We're going to practice a brief pause and breathe routine, which may be familiar to you, and it's absolutely, I was just saying earlier, a fabulous way to start our day. So we're so glad you're with us. We're also going to identify some strategies for nourishing the body and mind. And lastly, we're going to ask you to think about how you could apply some of these concepts of Nourish in your own life. Next slide, please. This training will review the pause and breathe. Remember to take time to be kind to yourself every day. Your self-care is important to your health and well-being and to the people that you're around each day. Today, I'm joined by my colleague, Peggy. We'll guide you through a short practice of pause, breathe. After that, Peggy will introduce a new strategy, Nourish your body and mind. Next slide, please. We'd like to finish today's session. We'd like to start today's session with a pause. Take a breath, sit back, sit for a moment, pause. Notice what's around you. Check in with yourself. How are you feeling this morning? Next slide, please, Katya. So we had our pause, we centered ourselves for a moment, and now we're going to breathe together. First, let's find a comfortable place to sit. Sit up straight in a firm chair with both feet on the floor. Place your right hand on your upper belly, just above your belly button, with your thumb at your breastbone. Place your left hand on your upper chest. Now breathe slowly and deeply in and out through your nose. Notice that your upper belly comes out when you breathe in and goes in when you breathe out. Your upper hand on your chest stays still. Try this for a few breaths. See if you can push your upper belly out as you inhale, and let it come in as you exhale. Now, begin to lengthen your exhale. Let your breath out more slowly and more completely. Don't force it. Just let your breath flow out naturally. Begin to count to yourself the time it takes to breathe in. And count the time to breathe out. try slowing down more as you breathe out. If it comes naturally, you can let your exhale be up to twice as long as your inhale. Counting your breath occupies your mind. By counting and making your out breath longer and more complete, you can calm your body and mind. Keep breathing. As you practice, breathe without a break or pause. Let go of any pause at the end of the inhale or the exhale. Let every inhale flow into the exhale. Let every exhale flow into the inhale. Let your breath flow. If you do need to pause between breaths, that's fine. Just see if you can shorten the pause. Breathing without a pause helps your mind become more focused. Check in with yourself now. How do you feel? From time to time during the day, notice your breathing. Use the strategy of breathe to help you become more calm and focused. And now Peggy is going to give us some great information about Nourish.
Well, thanks so much, Michelle. That really helped me for today. That was amazing. Just that little bit of time to stop and pause and breathe just really helps start the day and really help us today to think about this idea of nourishing ourselves. And it's the idea of nourishment isn't about a diet exercise. It's not a lecture on dieting and things. This is the idea that we nourish ourselves with good food, good thoughts, like really being mindful of the foods we do eat and the way we can be mindful. But again, the thoughts that we have. So how are we fueling our mind and our body with different kinds of things that we put there? So as we've gone through this session, these sessions where these are things we can just be thinking about pulling together. So eating well is one way, but it's trying to think about what are we hydrating ourselves with, all those kinds of things that can really be very important for us. So it's maybe not even just what we're eating or the kinds of foods, but how we're eating, or just being that mindfulness, that we can bring that mindful awareness to how we're nourishing ourselves with types of foods, but also the thoughts that we put on into our heads, and think about that. In terms of looking at the idea of nourishing our body, next slide. So, when we think about the nourishment, what are we doing to get ready to nourish our body? And today we had that opportunity to pause and just be aware of the moment, and have that practice with our breathe. So this idea of trying to think about pausing and paying our attention to, our meal or our food or things, just to be more involved in thinking about this a little bit more mindfully, and really enjoy the experience of the food that we are eating, and just be even just the gratefulness, again, thinking about the mind and body together here in nourishing ourselves, the gratefulness that we do have this opportunity to have this food that's before us. So it's also in terms of nourishing ourselves, paying attention to how we're fueling our body. One of the things we know with the kind of work that you do, or many of you are doing work that's very, we're on the go, or rushing, or moving around, but do we stop and pause and start to think about what we need to fuel our body, and being more mindful of that? So even that fact, I think this is one thing I hear a lot of people just taking that nourishment of taking the time to know when we are hungry or thirsty, right? I think like a lot of us, we just get into the mode and we forget to, drink some water, have some kind of a beverage to really hydrate ourselves. And when you look at hydrating ourselves again with the kind of water or some type of a liquid or beverage that can help keep us have a good energy level, but also has an effect many people see on the mood and energy level. So being a little more mindful of it, not telling people eat this, don't eat this, but being that mindful awareness of it. And each of us probably have preferences for what is what works well. And so what we want you to think about is just to be when are we getting ready to nourish our body? What are we being more mindfully aware of this, of noticing when we're hungry, noticing when we're thirsty, knowing the foods that make us feel well, right? There's a foods that do help us feel well. When we're preparing our food, are we mindfully thinking about what that is and trying to be able to then when we preparing the food and enjoying that experience, as well as thinking about knowing too, one of the things too, again, this is not a diet exercise, a lecture. There's things that we indulge in that we like that are good treat foods from time to time, and being okay with enjoying things that really we do like. And there often are very healthy things we can indulge in. And then there's the dark chocolate that does work well for many of us, right? So just being very mindful of treating ourselves sometimes and being kind to ourselves and being very mindful of the kinds of foods. So really thinking about that. In the chat, we'd like to hear what your thoughts about nourishing your body. What are some of the things you feel are foods that make you feel well? We'd like to see in the chat if anyone would want to tell us what are some of the foods that make you feel well. Chicken soup. Yeah, that nourishment, especially sometimes a fresh orange in the morning, right? Yeah, that get us fresh and activated and ready for the day. What about others? Blueberries are great. What's those foods that make you feel well? Scrambled eggs. Others, what kind of foods make you feel well? Looks like we don't have any. Well, I think, being mindful of these things, fruit smoothie with spinach. Again, a lot of these foods are really like things that could take time to savor, to enjoy, to prepare, that health component, and really being mindful of these things, and then being that mindful awareness of having the time to really, really think about when and where you can. Bone broth, nuts, excellent. Good to hear a lot of the different things. Oatmeal with fruit and green tea. Yeah, oatmeal is one of those things for me where I keep them in business because I just need my oatmeal, and I know it's one of those foods. Even it helps a lot with stress, and now from a prevention perspective, I keep that as a part of staple in my. It's a nourishing kind of food, and I also found it was very helpful for stress. So, thinking about what those foods are, and then if we think about the next slide, thinking about when and how we nourish our body. Thinking about when we need that food, when we need that nourishment, and taking the time to notice what we're eating, when we're eating, how we're eating. And again, part of we know in good routines and habits we can have that can work that are very important for our body, being attuned to that and trying what we can do in our best to be able to adjust that. Many times in this program, we've actually used to give people lunch boxes, small little insulated lunch boxes as part of this self-care program to remind us to pack that little lunch that you can stick in your book bag or your backpack so you can remember that what is that when and how, and have that reminder. Think about too the times of the day. Again, I like to hear, the orange in the morning, the oatmeal we hear. What gives you that energy in the morning? And what are those foods that when you start to feel that sluggishness or tiredness, what's the food we can maybe either have in our backpack or in our book bag or in our pocketbook or whatever we're carrying with it that we can have easy access to, and be thinking about the kinds of foods you can have readily available, especially the really hard work that many of you do in healthcare and education, because we're on that run. So trying to think about that. Again, it's a prevention, doing this regularly, but again, during stressful times, which many of us have, being an example of that, to have that those things readily available and making the time. People will sometimes say, we don't have the time. We don't have the time, but making the time can really help us, and it might help your productivity or your energy level to be equalized, that we can do our work well and finish it and then go on to the rest of our day to enjoy our day. So yeah, I'd like to hear some more cereal bars, have those kinds of things. Peanut butter, nut butter. Here we have in the chat a few more things people are writing here. Nuts and dried fruits are a good thing to be carrying with you. Yeah. And one of the things, again, in this whole program that we've offered, that we're providing to you, which we'll talk a little more at the end, is that kind bars. Those kind bars are something we often, when we do this program live, try to give people the kind bars, because the kind bars often have a healthy element to it. They taste kind of good. And also they're kind of easy to keep for being on the run. Peanut butter and peanut butter and OJ. Okay. Interesting. That's great. Yeah, those kind of things that activate and give you that fuel for the mind and the body. When we think about, so there's a lot with the body, and then with the mind, if we think about the mind, fueling our mind again. So there's the fueling of our body with the foods, the when and how and what we have. Yeah, peanut butter and dark chocolate. That's a great combination. Fantastic. So there's the nourishing of the body. And if we think about the next slide, thinking about not only the body, what we consume, but what do we put into the mind? And again, foods do affect I have major awareness of the foods that affect me negatively or positive. So being mindful, but there are the thoughts then that we feed ourselves. What are the thoughts and messages that really can help us feel good or feel better? So thinking about the thoughts, we have myself, I often was very in the habit of seeing what the wrong thing was, or what's the minefield to avoid, or what's the problem to solve. Getting our mind sort of sometimes defaults, especially when you're in academia. We always have to have that kind of critical eye, and it affects us. And in the field, we've been this way, or in education, sometimes it's that way. But where do we put the nourishment of the positivity? Looking at the moment, focusing on the moment, what's going well, what we're grateful for, and taking that time to shift our perspective, thinking about what fills our mind with good thoughts, what messages and thoughts we have, and really just being in the moment. And so Michelle's gonna take us a little bit into the next slide.
Thank you so much, Peggy. And in fact, I just wanted to share with the group that since I started doing this work with you, when we talked about this Nourish, I used to listen to the news at breakfast. And I noticed I would leave breakfast and I would be nervous and I would be anxious and upset about the news. And I decided that after, thinking about what would nourish my mind at breakfast, I listen to really pretty music now, and I sit and I look outside my backyard, and that has really made a big difference. So thank you, Peggy. And I encourage all of you to think about, what are you putting in your mind, even as you're eating or other times, that can make you feel stronger and more positive. Because those nourishing thoughts are really powerful. As we are wrapping up now, we'd love to hear from you now in the chat a little more about what went right for you so far today. These are important messages to send to ourselves. So just take a moment in the chat and let us know something that went right in your day today, or that is going right or went right yesterday, or even something you did that was positive and strong already. So I know I had my nut butter and my freeze-dried blueberries for breakfast, and I feel like that makes me feel strong. So I feel like that's the first step that I did. What have you done that makes you feel strong already? I also listened to a podcast that was sort of inspirational, that made me feel strong and took a pause. Um, Please feel free to type in the chat. Think of what you've done this morning. Oh, wonderful. We see that someone has sat on their porch and enjoyed the sun. That something as similar, something just as simple as that is really powerful. And listening to nature and people getting started with their day, that's a lovely way to wake up and transition. And someone else just said, hey, I woke up this morning. I made a smoothie and I'm here for this Zoom. Wonderful. Thank you so much for showing up. You showed up for yourself, actually. We're so glad you're here, and we hope that you could take this nourishment on as you go throughout your day. Someone else walked the dog. Oh, and oh, that we have someone who's hugged her dog and her horse. How wonderful. Drinking tea while sitting on the porch. This is great weather for porch sitting if you have one, or just sitting on your steps outside. Someone also mentioned praying this morning. That's a wonderful way to get your day started if that's what fulfills you and offers positivity to you. And someone else that had some wonderful fruit and granola for breakfast, and notice how wonderful the fruit tasted. And that's going back to what Peggy was suggesting in terms of Nourish, taking that moment to really savor your food, enjoy it, pausing while you're eating, tasting the food. And I know that sometimes we get in a rush and we're not able to do that, but it's so healthy to get our minds onto a different topic and also really enjoy the flavor of what you're actually eating. Oh, and someone journaled. Wonderful. Oh, and someone got a hug from one of their children who has autism. That's wonderful. Hugs are great. And someone else says, while they're working another night shift, but they're thankful for another day. And I think that, building a little gratitude, what's that saying? There's a wonderful saying from AA, put a little gratitude in your attitude. I think about that as nourishing, at least for me. It's not for everyone, but people, finding the right thing for you that feels nourishing, whether that's music or pets or family or porches or smoothies or horses, walking, any of those things that make you feel nourished and supported. You're worth it. And it's really worth it while to take that time for yourself. So let me just remind you that you can grab a moment anytime today or any day and practice one of the strategies we described. Sometimes it's really more effective to plan ahead. And as we go through this webinar series, we'll be asking you to think ahead of when and where you could build these self-care activities into your week and day. So you could even look at your calendar and say, you know what? I have some time at lunch. I'm going to build in 30 seconds for a pause, or I have maybe 5 minutes and I'm going to fill in the blank. That's going to help me have a good day. So you all have had some wonderful thoughts today, and it's beautiful to see how much people are already doing meditation and journaling and music. So all of these things. We took a pause together today. We learned about and practiced being present. And we talked about what you take in and how that affects how you feel, both your thoughts and your food. We also learned about and practiced nourishing your mind with positive thoughts. So Peggy and I want to remind you that we're going to be having on June 24th a seminar from 12 to 1 on using some of these concepts at your workplace. Peggy, do you want to say any more about that?
Yes, so on the 24th of June from 12 to 1, a lunch break, this series that we've offered, now this is the fourth and next week will be the fifth. It's based on some materials that's outlined at the end of the PowerPoint that you should receive. I'm part of this self-care guide. So what we will be doing is being able to, it's the slide before, we will be able to bring you through the materials and see how perhaps you could use these in your work. It will be a way for you to see what Michelle have done, and myself and Monica and Mary Catherine, all of us who have been presenting this, we've put it together a manualization of how you could do this in your program. Very short, like we've done here. We have it all mapped out to be able to help you think about learning how to maybe do this in your own workplaces or in your own life. So we really ask you to join us if you want for that hour to learn the how-to. And what we'll be doing after that how-to on the 24th is we'll have 3 sessions to help you, anybody who's interested in planning this, we'll help you with planning that over the course of 3 sessions during July into early August. We'll have some coaching sessions that will help anyone who's interested. So we want to thank everybody for participating again. Join us next week for this focus on pause, breathe, move, nourish, sleep. So next week is the sleep, the ending, not the ending, just the last one in this series. And then Michelle and I will invite you back to us in about a month from now at lunch this time. And I want to thank everybody, and please in the chat or send questions to us if there's anything we can ask, answer for you today. But we want to thank you for taking the time to join us today and learn together.